Hey there, MJ traders and investors. It's Rod with Power Group. Welcome back on the Pursuit of Wealth, your home for MJ stocks, crypto assets, news, and interviews. Also home to the best MJ community. Today is Saturday, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a great weekend so far. And in this video, we're going to be discussing, could the NASDAQ be warming up to US MJ companies listing on the exchange? We're going to discuss all that and more. Before we get to it, make sure to smash the like. It helps support me in the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. If you're new, you can subscribe, tick the bell, all that good stuff. You'll be notified on any future videos or when I go live. As always, though, this is not financial advice. You should never buy or sell anything based on anything that I say or write. This is for entertainment purposes only. Also, you can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter. The handle for that is @GroupPow. Going to be using that as my platform of choice going forward. And I posted on X about this earlier on today, but this has been something I've been saying for a while now. We see the game they're playing, right? It's so obvious how these market makers really kind of just roll things out, right? And it's never in a linear line. It's always with so much FUD. It's always met with positive and negative, and they can never let anything go in a straight line. They have to ebb and flow the market so that they can sell the rips and buy the dips, right? And I posted this a few days ago on April 30th on X. I said, here's the chain of events, in my opinion. Schedule 3 announcement, it happened as I said, right? I expected it to happen in April, and I got so much pushback on that. And then on the last day, on April 29th, I actually said, watch them, and I did a video on it. I said, watch them approve it tomorrow, the last day of April. I seen all over the social media and the industry that, oh, it's the last day of April. It's definitely not coming in April. And just when everybody least expects it, they did the same thing with HHS. It was the last day of August. No one thought it was going to come in August because of the August recess and whatnot. And on the last day of August, and they did the exact same thing in April. So if anybody doesn't think the market is rigged, it 1000% is, right? And you can see through all of their mind games and their manipulation. And then I said, okay, Schedule 3 announcement would happen. It happened exactly as I said. And the most likely scenario was Schedule 3 approved by DEA. We got that. And the most likely time frame was April. We got that. I even called it out saying the last day of April, but I digress. Next, we have MJ banking, then uplisting, and then Schedule 3 enactment, and last but not least, full-blown legalization and descheduling. Let's get it. That's how I still think the most likely scenario is. Could it potentially bypass Schedule 3 and just deschedule it altogether? I think that's a possibility. We need to account for that as well, and something that the market is not forward-looking upon. But as of right now, that could happen, right? The market's can do one of three things, up, down, or sideways, and we always have to be ready for a surprise. And what people are not expecting is uplisting, and what people are not expecting is descheduling, and ultimately treated the same as alcohol and tobacco and be removed from the CSA. But we would need Congress to act more than likely. That wouldn't happen from within the DEA. If you haven't seen my video with Morgan Fox, political director at Normal, I just did an interview yesterday with him. If you go over to the videos tab, you can see here a conversation with Morgan Fox, political director at nonprofit lobbying organization Normal. And we talk about that in the video and the possibilities of descheduling and international treaties violating that and whatnot. So very interesting. But like I said, maybe I'll give it like a 20% chance that we see descheduling, and then an 80% we get actual Schedule 3 enacted. And that's more than likely going to be, the end of 2024 or 2025. But here's the article here, and you can start to really see through what they're trying to do, right? The NASDAQ finally warming up. Yeah, finally, because we got some sort of reform, right? We got the Schedule 3 announcement and approval from the DEA, right? So they concur with HHS and the FDA. But here's the headline. NASDAQ finally warming up to Canadian MJ companies with US exposure. Could American growers be next? So Jefferies analyst Owen Bennett flags talks between Curaleaf, the largest US MJ company, and major exchanges. So this is something I mentioned as well, that Curaleaf alluded to this a couple of days ago, and now it actually has some teeth to it. This was dated May 3rd, late yesterday, but I wanted to go over this. And like I said, it's so obvious what they're trying to do, right? We're going to get the Schedule 3 announcement, right, and approval, but it's going to take a while to get enacted. Then they'll do, MJ banking, they'll do uplisting, and then who knows, what do you know, right on cue, right? It's almost as if I do have a crystal ball. Obviously I don't, but it's not that you need to have a crystal ball. You just need to put yourself in try to, basically most of what I do is try to think like a market maker, or lack of a better word, a Wall Street crook. So what I try to do is I try to put myself in the hands of, these market makers, and I try to put myself in their shoes. And if I were, a Wall Street crook, what would I do, right? Well, I would want to get positioned. I would want to create the biggest bear market ever, right? We just had almost 4 years of brutal bear market and, 80, 90+% drawdowns. I'd want to accumulate as much at the low as possible. I'd want to, the puppet masters pulling the puppet strings, if you will. They would want to accumulate as much as possible. This drive the sentiment into the ground. MJ sentiment the last year or so has been the lowest I've ever seen it. And then they would accumulate. They would take incremental steps towards reform. They would get the announcement of Schedule 3. They would do the HHS recommendation, right? And they made tons of money at some, like CGC, some stocks shot up 200, 300, 400 plus %. Then they crashed it all back down with the opposition, which I said they would more than likely do as well. And then they create the approval of DEA, and we see another run, another massive sell-off. And then imagine what's going to happen if we actually get uplisting. These companies are going to go absolutely berserk. If we get MJ banking, right, you're able to buy with credit cards and stuff like that in the US. It's no longer operating as cash businesses, which is very dangerous to customers and the staff and the overall. I'm not sure if you can hear this in the background, but there's a protest going on right in the middle of the street outside of my Airbnb. I'm not in my regular setup here today, but yeah, they're protesting pretty hard right now. So I'm not sure if you can hear that in the background, but try to keep my train of thought here. But yeah, so essentially, they're going to do it in incremental approaches, right? And nothing happens in the world without the big banks, the Wall Street banks, your JP Morgans, your Morgan Stanleys, Goldman Sachs, the BlackRocks of the world. So what would make the most sense for a Wall Street crook? Well, we would want to beat it down as much as possible, snag all the shares from retail. Then we would announce Schedule 3. We'd create ebbs and flows, massive rips and massive dips. We continue to short and continue to long, make tons of gains off of the expensive retail. And then we would uplist to the NYSE and the NASDAQ, get banking, right, in order, uplist to the NYSE and the NASDAQ so the Wall Street banks can get positioned. Then they would enact Schedule 3, 280E goes away, and then they would do full-blown legalization. That's what I still think is the most likely scenario. And again, just put yourself in their shoes, and that's exactly what I would do if I were a Wall Street crook. The NASDAQ Stock Exchange is warming up to the idea of continuing to list MJ companies, Canadian MJ companies, even if they have exposure to the US market. And I just did a video on that as well, that SNDL, so obviously Canopy USA, has the exchangeable shares and a novel structure, their new class of shares, non-voting shares. But SNDL and Sunstream are expanding their US presence, which I said, could very well happen. We could see other companies in Canada follow suit. And they talk about exchangeable shares, and they talk about a new structure, which the NASDAQ is okay with. So it's happening already. We're starting to see it spread, and we're starting to see like Curaleaf acquire Northern Green Canada, a small Canadian operator. US MJ companies are becoming Canadian MJ companies, and LPs are becoming MSOs, MSOs becoming LPs, vice versa, right? So it's already happening, and this is big. So Jefferies analyst Owen Bennett on Friday speculated that the NASDAQ could allow US-based MJ companies, Curaleaf Holdings, which currently trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange, which it just uplisted, right? TerraSen was the first to do so, and to list on its exchange, having allowed Canadian MJ companies Canopy Growth and SNDL to continue to trade after both companies bought US assets. Bennett noted that on a Spaces discussion on social media platform X, formerly Twitter, Curaleaf chair Boris Jordan said that a US major exchange had contacted Curaleaf to begin discussions. So it's actually true. A Curaleaf spokesperson said in an email to MarketWatch that the company is in ongoing dialogues with multiple major exchanges about potential plans. The company declined to provide additional details. A NASDAQ spokesperson did not comment. SNDL and Canopy Growth, which have already traded on the NASDAQ, are using what Bennett describes as a strategy of walling off U.S. assets through exchangeable shares, which I just mentioned earlier. And check out the video on SNDL if you want to learn more. Even though the NASDAQ prohibits U.S.-based companies from trading directly on its exchange, MJ companies, it has allowed the two Canadian companies to continue to trade despite pending deals to move into the US MJ market. And this was approved by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well. The NASDAQ appears to be warming up to the idea. Of course they are. We finally got rescheduling to Schedule 3, and they're like, oh, there's major reform coming. We got to get our Wall Street friends positioned, right? Nothing in the world happens without the Morgan Stanleys, the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgans, and the BlackRocks. So they've been contacting us, BlackRock and JP Morgan. They're saying, hey, I think you better start warming up. And they're like, oh, hey, now we're starting to warm up. They got to get positions because they got to get their paws all over everything because they're greedy SOBs. This week, Calgary, Alberta-based SNDL said it had received a green light from the NASDAQ for plans by its company-sponsored joint venture Sunstream USA to buy US MJ assets. SNDL is satisfied with the Sunstream USA group structure, conforms to applicable laws, and is not aware of any reason that would cause SNDL to not be in compliance with NASDAQ listing rules. According to Bennett, the move resembles an exchangeable share structure that Canopy Growth recently approved as part of the creation of Canopy USA business. And this is what I said. Like, we need to be on the lookout for Canopy paving the way for other companies to do so as well in Canada, right? And who knows, maybe there's a Tilray USA. We know that MedMen is currently going through bankruptcy and talking to creditors. And we know that that Tilray had some of their convertible debts, so maybe they acquire some of their assets through that liquidation process. Canopy USA holds options to acquire 3 US-based MJ companies, Wana, Jetty, and Acreage. For now, the federal U.S. prohibition on MJ continues to keep U.S.-based MJ companies from being listed on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. And if you just take a look at some of the dollars traded, right? Like Curaleaf, Green Thumb, some of these companies are only trading, somewhere around the neighborhood of $10 to $20 million in a day on a good day. And Canopy's trading like $1 billion. Just in one day in March 2022, Tilray, just on the NASDAQ alone, traded $2.2 billion worth of shares, just on the NASDAQ in one day. So just imagine what's going to happen in the growth potential once we start to see uplisting of these US-based MJ companies. The largest multi-state US MJ company, including Curaleaf, Green Thumb, Trulieve, Verano, and Cresco, currently trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange or the Canadian Securities Exchange. So the only one trading on the Toronto Stock Exchange is Curaleaf and TerraSet. The others will likely follow suit, or we might just see them bypass that altogether as well and go straight to a US major exchange. It's certainly looking that way. I also just did a video on Pillar 2 in Germany. They're starting to fast track that, which no one saw that coming. They're looking to do through regulation rather than pass bills. So it's going to be interesting to see how that happens. Retail investors interested in the space often have to buy stocks in those companies on more thinly traded over-the-counter market, which fewer institutional managers or exchange funds participate in. So it's pretty much done here. This arrangement also restricts the flow of capital to the US MJ companies that could potentially raise from domestic investors who may currently be This arrangement also restricts the flow of capital that the US companies could potentially raise from other domestic investors who may currently be avoiding the sector, obviously, right? As we start to see the stigma go away, rescheduling to Schedule 3, eventually full-blown descheduling treated like alcohol and tobacco, of course these big Fortune 500 companies are going to want to get into the space, right? Because they have a fiduciary duty. They have shareholders to adhere to. They can't be they can't be supporting a plant or a drug or a medicine that's on the same list as heroin, Schedule 1. That wouldn't fly very well with their investors, right? So as we start to get bumped up to Schedule 3, like Tylenol and codeine, eventually descheduled, treated like alcohol and tobacco, then obviously, your Budweisers, your Coca-Colas, all these companies, which have already expressed, interest potentially in the sector, there'd be nothing holding them back at that point. Meanwhile, MJ stocks got a jolt upward this week after the U.S. Department of Justice said that the Drug Enforcement Administration will issue a rule to move MJ to a less restrictive category of Schedule 3 from Schedule 1 under the CSA. So opposition that the move has arisen from Washington based on smart approaches to MJ. So SAM, a group opposed to the legalization of MJ, which is vowed to challenge the rescheduling effort. So again, they don't do it without the FUD campaign. They never ever make it easy, right? And they must hate the American people because 80% in some form or another want legalization. So this SAM group, in my opinion, hates the American people and hates America, as far as I'm concerned. Give the people what they want, end of story, shut the F up. It's so stupid. Kevin Savitt, president of SAM, called MJ a psychoactive drug known to come with serious health and mental health consequences. Okay, this guy is out to lunch and obviously working for the big banks and trying to get them more accumulation and more shares before they really let the shackles go. And maybe he's even working for the big pharma, big alcohol, big tobacco as they look to stall, right? And they don't want everything to happen so quickly because they need to get positioned. I used to work for a pharmaceutical company, and I can tell you they were into opioids as well, and they were fined billions of dollars for that crisis and having their part in it. And I can tell you one thing. For the last 2 years that I was there, they could not stop talking about MJ, how to get positioned. So believe you me, it's happening. And the ones that are the incumbents, the ones with the most to lose are big pharma, big alcohol, big tobacco. And watch you, they're coming for it. We already see Imperial Brands, British American Tobacco, Altria, Constellation Brands, the writing's on the wall. And like I said, it's so easy to see what they're doing and how this game is played. It just takes a little bit of experience and a little bit of thinking outside the box and trying. I know not everybody wants to think like a Wall Street crook because we're actually all human and good, genuine people. But if you just think like a scumbag and how these people would manipulate the market, it really does make sense and it helps a lot. So let's intercept their evil and do good with it. So going in it there, let me know what you think of this news. It's Rod with Pow Group. Thanks again for joining us in the pursuit of wealth, and we'll see you again on the next video. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.